Right now, Pittsburgh's best sports show is about to begin. Call us or tweet us. We've got things to talk about on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome inside the Fan Cave. Bob Pompeani with you tonight at 412-575-2600. That is the number of the hotline here for the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. Hit us up also on Twitter at KDPomp or the Pony Express. Andrew Filipponi up at 93.7 The Fan. And Andrew, I want to talk about George Pickens. He missed yesterday's game, which I think is a smart move. Based on this injury report from Jerry Dulac, we'll find out what Mike Tomlin has to say tomorrow right here on this very television station and on your airwaves at 93.7 The Fan at noon. But I got to believe now that he may not play again this week against Philadelphia. They did a pretty good job yesterday with some guys making plays when they had to. How big of a loss is this for the Steelers against that Philadelphia team?
Well, yeah, before we get to that, and Bob, great to be back here. I missed the last couple of sports calls.
Babysitting, but I know how that goes. You got to take care of the little one.
It is great to be back here with you. Look, I still need more information. I don't think we're going to get it tomorrow from Tomlin because he's not very transparent usually with injuries. I'm just a little bit confused as to why it was so close to getting cleared for this past game yesterday, and now we're already jumping ahead and saying he's probably going to miss the game against the Eagles. Look, Philly's got their own problems right now, even though they've won 9 straight because of what's going on between A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts. But I've seen them, Hurts and Brown, kill the Steelers before and figure it out. I don't think the Steelers can beat the Eagles without George Pickens. I'm just going to come right out and say it. Given how difficult it was at times against the Browns, 4 3-and-outs early in that game on their first 5 possessions. I don't think against that great defense right now, Bob, on the road where they haven't won since 1965, if they don't have George Pickens, I'm going to chalk this one up as a loss against the first-place Eagles.
They're underdogs, and Philadelphia, though, has won 9 in a row, and they've been, they scratched and clawed their way to a win against Carolina. That could have been one of those so-called trap games, playing down a little bit, knowing what's coming up down the road. They're playing for the number 1 seed. There is dissension between those two you mentioned, but they also have kicking problems. Week after week, we see Chris Boswell perfect on just about everything, and yet Justin Tucker misses a couple. And then we see the kid in Cincinnati miss one. Then we see Hopkins miss 2. And then we see, all these things are happening. Elliott has missed, I think, all 5 of his kicks over 50 yards. Kickers don't normally factor into these equations, but when they play tight games the way they do, that's a huge advantage for the Steelers.
I totally agree, and even throw Corliss Waitman in there, who I thought had a terrific game against the Browns. I thought he was tremendous. Now he had to make up for that shank he had against them in that Thursday night game. And then you add on top of it, they've blocked kicks, they've blocked punts. They've had Calvin Austin return a punt return for a touchdown this year. I just think overall the special teams have been a hidden advantage for the Steelers in a lot of these games, and they're probably going to need something like that to springboard them to victory. The Elliott thing is fascinating because last year he was so good, and that speaks to the consistency that we've seen with Chris Boswell over the years, Bob. But it's, eventually I see that in a playoff game. We saw him kick 6 and win one for the Steelers a few years ago. That could absolutely be the X factor in a January game for them, that they have a kicker who's basically automatic.
Real quick, I want to ask you about the college football playoff. Penn State, by losing to Oregon in the Big Ten championship game, seems to have a better kind of draw here. I have a lot of respect for SMU watching them play, and I really like what I've seen from Boise State and their outstanding running back, Genty, who's put up ridiculous numbers. How do you feel about where they are slotted, and what are your expectations of the Nittany Lions in 30 seconds?
I've never heard more rationalizations about how that game went my entire life. They blame the refs. They also, fans say, well, this is what we preferred, to be at home in Happy Valley for the first round of the tournament. How about this? Be a good team if you're Penn State. And that has rarely happened under James Franklin. His record against top 10 teams, I believe he's now 1-14 in 15 games. SMU, Bob, they've lost 2 games to good teams, BYU and Clemson. I don't look at this as a walk in the park whatsoever for Penn State. They're a big favorite. I don't think they should be against SMU in a couple Saturdays.
Yeah, I like points like that. That's a lot of points in that game. And to me, this is, even though it is technically a top 5, top 10 matchup, it is a playoff game, and this is one that Penn State definitely has to win. We'll talk more about that and other things coming up. It's 412-575-2600. That's the number to call as we continue live. It's the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call right here on KDKA+. GMC Sierra tweet of the night comes from CBS Sports College Football, and it's about the Heisman finalists. I think the odds-on favorite easily is Travis Hunter. Plays just about every play of the game. 1,100 receiving yards, 93 catches, 4 interceptions for Colorado. But I got to give a lot of consideration to Ashton Jeanty out of Boise State. This guy has put up ridiculous numbers: 29 rushing touchdowns, 2,500 yards rushing. Dylan Gabriel's not going to win. Cam Ward, good seasons, but not enough. Yes,
Bob. Let me just say on that note, Dylan Gabriel's candidacy for a second here. They're the only undefeated Power 4 team. He transfers in there and elevates the program back to a status they haven't been there in probably more than a decade. And look at the way he played in the 2 biggest games of the year against Ohio State and Penn State. I mean, who did Ashton Jeanty put up his big games against?
It's not his fault.
Wyoming and San Jose State?
We'll see what he does in these kind of games coming up. But I still judge guys on what they've been able to do. I saw Boise State against Oregon. They almost beat him. So that was a pretty good opportunity for them. He's been terrific.
Well, Dylan Gabriel was the better player in that game. I'll say that again.
I understand that.
I mean, that's what I'm a little bit confounded by. It's just interesting. Boise State's gotten a lot of love this year, and I'm happy for them and for these mid-major programs. But they're pretty much, Bob, the number 3 seed in this tournament because they lost a close game to Oregon. Think about that. That's what got them the third over. Now look, they got to put the conference champions in the bye spots, but that's how they got ahead of Arizona State and who else am I forgetting here?
Travis Hunter.
That's how they got ahead of Arizona State and Clemson. Oh. That's how they got ahead of those two conference championship teams, by losing a close game to Oregon.
But let me tell you this, in that game, Jeanty, I think, had 3 touchdown rushes in that game and 192 yards against the Ducks. That tells me a lot about his ability. And
would you pick Boise to beat Penn State?
Yes, I would, actually. I probably would. I think if it gets to that, I think Boise's that kind of team that can do it. I do. It'll be at a neutral site. I like Penn State to beat SMU, but I think it'll be a really tough game, and I think Boise State is capable of going on a run here. That's just me. But Hunter's going to win it, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so, too, because of the two-way status. Charles Woodson did a little bit of that when he won in '97. Right. And obviously Michigan was the best team, or them and Nebraska were the 2 best teams in the country that year. But, yeah, I think because it's so unique, it's like the Shohei Ohtani of football with Hunter. I think he'll get the award for that reason. All
right, let's go to our number 1 Cochrane Go One Better caller of the night. We're going to begin tonight with Frank in Greentree. Hello, Frank.
Thanks, Bob, Andrew, for taking my call. Happy holiday to you and your family. Real quickly, Andrew, I agree with you about them using Pickens primarily, but I don't think he's the end-all to the wide receivers winning most of their games. They have talented tight ends and receivers that they can use depending on what kind of play and scheme they match with them. And also, they have Kelvin Austin III, which he got banged up, and I'm sure they're putting him on special teams to kind of save him a little bit. But they can also use him as a deep threat with his speed. And I wanted to get you guys' take on that. Have a great day.
All right. You too, Frank. Go ahead, Pony.
He's their most important player because the drop-off from him to the next guy is the biggest, I think, on the team, and that includes T.J. Watt. If Watt went out, you'd still have Herbig, you'd still have Highsmith, you'd still have Preston Smith. If something happens to Joey Porter Jr., you still have Dante Jackson. Trice is healthy now. We saw Pierre actually make a big play. He's actually made a few big plays when he's gone in and had to play on defense. You look at quarterback even. If Russell Wilson got hurt, we saw Justin Fields go 4-2, Bob. I thought that it looked pretty obvious to me why the Steelers have tried so hard to find another playmaker at wide receiver because of what happens to their offense. It was just hard. Russ made some, incredible plays and throws to Van Jefferson and Freiermuth for touchdowns, and even making plays to Freiermuth.
Don't forget
and Scotty Miller, that back shoulder play. Yeah, that was a good one. But, man, it was not easy going. They could not really find traction and footing running the ball without Pickens in the game. I thought that was kind of an up and down thing and a real struggle in the game against the Browns, who are not one of the better run defenses in the NFL. So I would just politely disagree with Frank, Bob. I think they are so much easier to defend if George Pickens is not in the lineup.
And even if he doesn't catch the ball, it's his presence and what it does for freeing up others. So I think that's a big part of it, and they're going to have to overcome that if this continues, especially in the next 2 games. You know, if it is one of these, 4-week kind of injuries, he may not play in the Eagles or may not play in the Ravens, and those are 2 huge games for them. Let's go to Steve in Black Ridge. Hello, Steve. How are you?
I'm good, Bob. Glad to see that the Cobra finally got the call.
Yes, long overdue. That's it? Okay.
I think that was his point.
That was his point. Yeah, it's long overdue. He and Dick Allen, just 2. Watching Dave Parker, I remember some really amazing plays that he did. Not just with his bat, but with his glove, with his ability to throw the ball. He was one of those 5-tool guys, and I wonder what he'd be worth today in the middle of his career when he was at his height of popularity and production, what he would make today, given what we saw from Ron Soto, who got, and by the way, $51 million a year, that sounds a lot, but if you look at quarterbacks, NBA players, they're all going to do better on average annual value, I think. It's just that, they could do whatever they want with this. They've been deferring a lot in L.A. They're not going to do that with this contract. I know you're a Mets fan, Andrew, but what do you think of this?
It's bad for baseball, generally speaking, because it just drives a bigger divide between the teams at the very top, like the Mets, Yankees, and Dodgers, and teams here like the Pirates. But at the same time, I do applaud a guy that's worth $20 billion, Steve Cohen, the owner of the Mets, who's just like, screw it. I bought this team. I want this team to win, and I'm going to pull out the stops to win. Wouldn't we want that in an owner? I mean, that's what I know it's a salary cap sport, but that's what we love about the Rooneys, and that's what we loved about the Burkle-Lemieux ownership group, is that those teams did everything in their power to try to win championships, and that's exactly what he's doing. He's playing by the rules. He's not doing anything wrong. He's not circumventing things like I thought the Dodgers did by pushing all this money down the road.
Yeah.
That to me was kind of circumventing the whole system.
Totally.
He's putting his money where his mouth is, and I agree with exactly what you just said. Dak Prescott's making $60 million a year. I know football is more popular than baseball, but it's 17 games versus 162, and it's for a 26-year-old guy who's been around for a while, but still might not even be in the prime of his career. So if you're going to give that kind of money to anybody, the 2 guys you give it to are Shohei Ohtani and Juan Soto, in my opinion.
And they both got it, and I think it's great. I think Bob Dunning can do a lot more.
And Paul Skeens is going to get it if he stays healthy.
Yeah, it won't be here, though, and that's the thing. They have only so many years here to cash in on this. Getting back to the economics, listen, all these owners are happy with the system. They should not be. They should not be happy with it. They should say, look, in order for us to be a little bit competitive, we've got to have at least a floor. If you want to spend $700 million, but I got to be responsible for spending a certain amount of money here, and right now it's whatever they want.
Bob, I mean, the thing, just not even what the Mets have done, what the Dodgers did with Blake Snell to make the rich richer. The A's, who don't even have a real home, signed Luis Severino to a $67 million contract to be their ace. Okay, they were an up-and-coming team in the second half of the season. They were awful early, and they played much better in the second half with young guys like Brent Rooker, who Pirates fans wanted to trade for, J.J. Bleday as well. And now they're augmenting to their team in free agency, which is unheard of from that franchise as they gear up for their move to Vegas in a few years. If the A's can give out a $67 million contract, there's no excuse for the Pirates. I keep hearing names like Anthony Rizzo. Max Kepler is the latest name that's got thrown out there.
What about Pete Alonso? Let's bring him over here. Give him whatever he wants. Make him play first base. In fact, I wouldn't even mind if you got Paul Goldschmidt on a 1-year deal. Whatever the case, they need to spend more money. Real quick, let's go to the lines. Before we go to break, we have Gene and Jeanette. Gene, can you make it quick, please?
Sure. Just wanted to see what your opinion was on why Pickens got hurt. And I had a theory about that. He punted the football after he made a touchdown last week. And, I'm thinking he probably aggravated it.
Weirder things have happened, Gene. I mean, who was it, the kicker in Arizona who went down because he was celebrating a made field goal? The name escapes me, Andrew. Who am I talking about?
Gramatica.
Yeah, Martin Gramatica. In this case, who knows what that would have. And then Freiermuth, as a tribute, kicked one even better. into the stands, but I don't know if that's the reason or not. But it's an injury that could linger. That's a troublesome thing.
Well, yeah, and this is going to be the most daunting stretch. In fact, I'm going to say this. 3 games in 11 days at Philly, at Baltimore, and then home for the Chiefs. I think that's harder than any 3-game stretch the Steelers will face in the playoffs. Because in the playoffs, you'll have full rest for these games, and we'll see how many are at home. But that amount of games against great teams in a condensed period of time, Bob, that's impossible, in my opinion, for them to come out 3-0 or looking good.
Again, it's just, safety. Safety doesn't matter when they're trying to make money and use HBO in these Hard Knocks series. And I think this whole schedule is predicated on that, and Christmas being on a Wednesday. I want to take advantage. We're due for a break. I'm talking too much. Andrew, hang on. We'll come back with more right here on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. Ken Rice is standing by at the anchor desk to tell us what's coming up tonight. KDK News at 11. Ken?
Hey, Bob, tonight we're following the breaking news. Murder charges just filed against the suspect in the shooting death of that insurance CEO in New York. Plus, KDK Investigates taking a deep dive into the potential dangers of police chases. And Ray Patlin's tracking a big cool down. All coming up right here at 11, Bob. See you in a few.
All right, Ken, thanks very much. Pony, are the Penguins back? Do you believe what you're seeing as Tristan Jarry turned the corner?
Well, he turned the corner from being a minor league goalie. He's played a lot better than that. So in that respect, he looks like he's at least worthy of being on an NHL roster. But I hated the game they played Friday against the Rangers. I give them credit for rebounding against the Maple Leafs Saturday night at home. But I'm not going to say they're completely back yet. Better than they were, though, the last time we talked. And, Bob, what is Pitt doing playing in the Game Above Sports Bowl? What is that thing? 2 o'clock the day after Christmas?
Yeah. I don't understand. I mean, and you wonder how many guys are actually going to play. There are transfers that are considering and have done it already.
Rodney Hammond in the portal.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It is what it is, and that's it for us tonight. Andrew, thanks very much. Appreciate it. As always, I'll see you again back here tomorrow night at 10:35. And thank you for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow on another edition of the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. Have a good night.